Welcome to The Swing of Things, U.S. Rowing's podcast, produced by Row 360. Thank you to the sponsor of this episode, Concept 2. They have been making world-class products since 1976, and most of our listeners know them for their rowing machines. Products from Concept 2 will help you get fit, stay fit, win your race, or train for your primary sport. In this episode, I sit down with my Australian counterpart, Sarah Cook, who is the first female CEO of Rowing Australia. Before becoming a two-time Olympic rower, Sarah represented Australia as a sailor. Nowadays, she's still a familiar face at the boat park and well known for her World Rowing and Henley Royal Regatta commentary. Before we hear from Sarah, let's get the latest from the man in the hot seat, U.S. Rowing's Chief High Performance Officer, Josie Verdonschot. Hi, Josie. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Amanda.
Long time no see since yesterday.
Yeah, that is true. We had a great dinner with the athletes, some people who really love rowing. So that was a good moment.
Can't go wrong. So you're still in Princeton with the team. And can you give us an update on what's happening soon? What's next?
Well, you might expect this, but so soon there's going to be Olympics. No. Right now, everybody is digging in. We're training pretty hard. It's final part of preparation. So almost all crews are training together. There's only one crew, Jacob, who will race Henley, Jacob Plihal, who qualified to single. He is on a little bit different schedule because he is obviously going to race Henley to have an additional experience. But for the rest, we're here. All 11 qualified crews and our 5 spares. Distributed a bit. We train at Carnegie, thanks to Princeton. We train at Mercer. And just doing what we're supposed to do in this period. And then we stay here until July 5th, which is a nice date, so they can enjoy the fireworks on July 4th. Mm-hmm. And then we fly out to Italy. Final prep camp there with everybody on the beautiful lake of Pusiano. Mm. And then July 22nd is the date that we arrive in Paris. We fly from Milano to Paris. And then, show can begin.
Very exciting. And is there, I'm sure there is, when is the taper? It's my favorite part.
Well, there's one thing I have to explain to you about taper. Without training, you don't, there's no taper. So in your case,
you have to do the training to get the taper.
You actually do the training. So if you would look at it, we came back from the World Cup and final qualifiers. There were 3 solid weeks of base training with lots of volume. Mm-hmm. And then now the next 2 weeks, we gradually decrease the volume. We bring in a bit of intensity. And then let's say really starting to taper would be probably from 8 days out of the racing. Mm-hmm. And so what you do is your highest intensity is more or less in between 14 days and 7 days before you start racing. And so in that period, you bring down a little bit the number of and the mileage of your training. But yeah, it's also a bit of a. It depends always a little bit how people are, because you don't want them to be tapered too early. So if you feel that they are really, really good, and you can keep on pushing a little bit longer. And when you feel that they are already, up to their eyeballs with lactic acid just by looking at a boat, you would think that people like that would need a little bit of extra rest. And that's why we also try to individualize. And our team, the coaches, we follow one common program, but there's always room for variation within, so from one crew to another, but also within crews, so that you would say, okay, this week, this person needs a little bit more rest. So we row small boats and we can rest that person. Like you try to make nuance like that. And in the end, tapering has another aspect. People become nervous if you do too little. So that's a mental thing. You also have to prepare them that it's necessary to wind down, because otherwise it's not really preparing the body. It's just, going nuts in that. So you have to find a fine balance. It can be different per person.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Josi, thank you. We're all excited and doing a big send-off next week at Princeton for the team. And then hopefully we'll get to talk to you again in Italy before the games, but we'll see how everything is going. And in the meantime, just thank you so much. Go USA.
Yeah, go USA. We are having fun. We will be good.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Josi.
You're welcome.
Now it's my pleasure to welcome to the show Olympian and Rowing Australia's CEO, Sarah Cook. Sarah, it's so good to see you. What time is it there in Australia?
It's 7 a.m. in Australia, so it's not too bad. Not too early.
I think I've seen you at worse hours on your end. So thank you for taking some time with us. So thrilled to be having this conversation. And I wanted to just jump right in. You formally moved into the role as CEO almost a year ago. Is that right?
Yeah, it was July last year, but it was about a year ago that our CEO decided to take another opportunity. And so I probably didn't expect it to happen a year out from the games. I think, Ian was quite clear that he was going to do something different after the Olympics. So it all happened probably a year earlier than expected. But I was certainly run through the ringer as part of that process, the CEO process. I was helping on an interview panel yesterday, and they asked me about the process I went through, and it was very rigorous, actually, which is not all that normal for sport because it was very much a corporate style process. We're quite lucky that our president and chair of Rowing Australia is Rob Scott, who is an Olympic silver medalist from '96, but he's also the CEO of Wesfarmers, which is Australia's largest conglomerate, and he's one of the most prominent business people in the country. And so for me, an incredible mentor as I've stepped into this role and really embarked on my career in the last few years. But Rob made his team and the tools that he would use at Wesfarmers for the recruitment of his senior executives available. So that was the style of process that I went through, and it was really interesting, like a really amazing experience. I went through a series of aptitude tests, verbal, numerical, abstract reasoning, a personality test, a full 360, and then of course my pitch to the board as to my vision for the organisation moving forward. So it was a very tight time frame, but a really intense process, but a really fantastic one to have the opportunity to go through as well.
Well, for those of us looking at it, seemed like the obvious choice. So, but congratulations. And so almost a year, and you weren't new to Rowing Australia because you had been the chief operating officer. That's what you were doing when I first met you. And now that you've been in it for, almost a year, what did you expect the role to be like? And then have there been any surprises?
That's a really good question. That's one I might turn back on you once I've come up with something.
Oh, yes, I did offer that before we got on here, that you were allowed to throw back. To be fair, you could throw questions back at me. So I might regret that, but you go first.
Look, I think there's a couple of things and people who have been in, I guess, these kinds of roles, CEO roles, but particularly in organisations as lean and as intense as ours are in sport particularly, it's the constancy, being on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. If I need to be at a World Rowing meeting from midnight till 3 a.m., then that's what I'm doing, and generally can't get back to sleep, so just start my day and away you go. Or, if you have to travel to the other side of the world or even around the country, I'm traveling domestically most weeks. And it sounds a lot more glamorous than it is, of course. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at home, so it is, that it's intense to have that load, and I'm incredibly supported by my husband. It just, if we didn't work in partnership, I think the intensity would be too much, really, of the role. But the other element, which I find a little bit exciting, to be fair, is showing up to work in the morning and going, what totally random thing is going to land on my desk today. Like,
Totally.
And some days you go,
Totally.
okay, that's the thing. And that is so weird. And I would not have ever thought. And
Yes.
Sometimes they're quite benign or a bit funny, and other times they're incredibly serious. But it's just not knowing what might land.
You
on
just
any given
don't know. You don't know what's coming around the corner. Isn't that right?
Yeah. How about you? What's any surprises for you in this role?
Yeah, I think coming into the role, I thought it would be, I think I underestimated how much work there was to be done. And I thought maybe not how much work there was to be done. I thought it would happen faster. I thought there was sort of like a switch somewhere that could be turned on to affect change. And I realized pretty quickly that things were harder and took longer than I imagined they would. But I so agree with you. It's just, you just don't know what's going to come into your inbox or the phone call you're going to get. And sometimes it's super exciting. Sometimes it's devastating. But always, if you have a good team to work with it makes it so much better. So speaking of team, what is the staff at Rowing Australia? Who's on your team?
Yeah, so we've got quite a lean team outside of the high performance side. So I've got, I guess from an HP side, the most important person for me is our high performance director, Paul Thompson. And Tomo is, he's quite an amazing person. We're both from Canberra. He grew up in Canberra and rowed there and rowed as an underage athlete, and then moved into coaching in the 80s. And he coached Australia's first Olympic gold medal with Megan and Kate in the pair in 96, and then a silver medal with Kate in 2000, and who rowed the pair with Rachel Taylor. And then he went to Great Britain for 20 years and was the head coach, coached their first Olympic gold medal, and coached Catherine Granger across her career. So has this obviously incredible system knowledge, and was really part of British rowing across its, one of its most successful periods, especially for women's rowing. He then went to China, coached a gold medal there before coming back to Australia and ultimately taking on the high performance director role about 2.5 years ago. So we're so lucky to have an Australian, someone who understands our system and was there, I guess, when our sport was really kind of entering that era of professionalisation. Try and say that word, and then to be able to have this amazing system knowledge from some of the really successful systems globally. So he's an incredible support for me from a high performance side, and he really is responsible for that whole side of the program. And we've got probably about 25 staff in the HP side. That includes our coaches, our performance support staff, including our physiologists and biomechanists and physios and doctors and nutritionists and dietitians. So he's got a big team there that he works with. And
that's full time, Sarah. Is that full time?
Yeah.
25 full time people.
Or probably varying degrees. Our coaches are probably, as most people would appreciate, doing 2 full-time roles in one. It's a huge load as a high-performance coach. And then we've got some part-time. Some of our performance support staff roles are part-time, like our nutritionist and our psychologist and things like that. So, but certainly the coaches are full-time. And then on the non-high performance side of the business, I have my GM operations, Mitchell, who started in January, and he comes to us from AFL, so really great across governance and policy and risk and some of those things that we really needed to contemporize in the business. So he's just hit the ground running in Jan and has been a great support for me. I've got my commercial manager, Emily, my EA, Georgia, and that's pretty much it outside of the HP side. We outsource some of our functions around media and finance and sponsorship, but yeah, it's a pretty lean team outside of the HP side.
So it's really only those 4 people outside of high performance.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. Okay. This is so interesting. So very different structure. So the majority of your staffing budget is high performance. And can you talk about your budget, your operating budget for 2024 roughly what percentage is for high performance versus other parts of the sport?
So that's interesting because we get, I think it's about $12 million a year from the government. I say I think, I know, obviously.
That must be nice.
but it's quarantined for high performance use only. So we fully fund our teams. We fund big teams, as many people would know, across all ages of the sport, but particularly on the senior team. You know, we have 80 people travelling. But obviously coming from Australia, we, like the Kiwis, when we come over for 3 months. So that is an extremely expensive exercise because coming back and forward is costly, and obviously it jeopardises performance doing that kind of travel multiple times a year. And we're fortunate that the Australian Institute of Sport has built our European Training Centre in Varese. So we have a little piece of Australia down by Lake Varese in a little town called Gavrate. So I spent some time training there when I was an athlete, and it's amazing. You drive down the hill and all of a sudden there's this building and compound with the Australian flag and the Australian Institute of Sport flag, and it really is like a little piece of Australia in northern Italy. So we're incredibly lucky to have that facility. It's even got Australian power sockets in the walls, so
built in. That's great.
Yeah, so it's amazing to have that.
And you have, I remember your predecessor telling me about, you have someone on your team who's actually stationed here in the States to support, I don't know if that's still the case, but to support your collegiate athletes here in college.
Yeah, so, we have John Bowes. So he's our Pathways Transition Manager is the name of his role. And of course, the US college program is one of our most important pathways from a talent perspective. So we have somewhere around 160 Australian rowers in the US at the moment. So trying to keep an eye on who's there and what they're doing. When I came through the sport, it was really, the mentality was if you go to a US college, you're never coming back. You're not integrating back into the Australian system. That's completely changed. So John lives in Queensland, but he does travel regularly to the US. He's got really strong networks now with the colleges and with the athletes there. We have a database so we can maintain contact. And we actually run our under-23 trials in Princeton.
That's right.
Normally in June. So we look to select one men's boat and one women's boat from the pool of college athletes that would like to be a part of it. And then what do you do on the domestic front in terms of regattas? Is Rowing Australia responsible for all the domestic regattas? Yeah, so we have a federated system. So our states are standalone businesses. So Rowing Queensland, Rowing New South Wales, Rowing South Australia. We have 7 members. The only member state we don't have is Northern Territory for obvious reasons. Taking a boat out rowing, you'll meet a few friendly crocodiles. So it's maybe if as indoor rowing gets bigger, we'll have a way into the NT. But certainly all of the other states are members of Rowing Australia. So we have 7 members in terms of our governance. They're standalone businesses. They deliver the regattas within their state and territory. They're responsible for sport development and participation within the state. And we run, I guess, really the high performance side. We provide that overarching leadership and governance to the sport nationally. And then we run the 4 national events. So the Australian Rowing Championships is kind of the jewel in the crown. That's our biggest income generating asset at Rowing Australia outside of government and commercial funding. And then we have the Australian Masters Rowing Championships, which are coming up in May. We have the Australian Coastal Rowing Championships now, which is our newest event. So it's in its 3rd year this year. And then we have the Australian Indoor Rowing Championships, which normally run in about October, and they're fully virtual now.
So you're doing a lot. And what are you doing on this is something that's a big focus here, is safety and safeguarding. And I know, the US and Australia, we've had some good intense conversations on this front. What is the role of Rowing Australia when it comes to safety and safeguarding?
Yeah, so we, as I said, we are responsible for that overarching leadership governance of the sport. And one of the really big changes that we've had here, and what was a world first, was the establishment of Sport Integrity Australia about 3.5 years ago, where it brought all of the integrity functions into one organisation. So it's funded by government. It's an agency of government, but wagering, safeguarding, anti-doping, all of those integrity functions under the one organisation now. They have a really close link with sport. In fact, I was helping them with a recruitment for one of their senior executives yesterday. So we have a really strong relationship with SIA. One of the changes they did was the National Integrity Framework, which is basically a comprehensive suite of policies across all of the different integrity-related areas that now applies to all of sport. And then I guess the subsidiaries within sports. So Rowing Australia is bound now we've adopted the National Integrity Framework, and then we have a National Integrity Manager that we share with 2 other sports. So a third of his time comes to rowing, but we share him with paddle and with dragon boat. And he deals with the complaints and the issues and integrity related matters as they come in. So that's quite a full-on job.
So that's your, I think it sounds like that's your version of Safe Sport, Center for Safe Sport, which is what we have here, which is a centralized system for Olympic sports and issues around safety and safeguarding.
Yeah. How is that, I guess, received by your community implementing some of that? I
think probably there's been a mixed response is the best way to describe the response. I think there are a lot of people who appreciate that something needed to change. And, it came out of the wake of what happened with USA Gymnastics and Larry Nassar and, the USOPC and Congress recognizing, wow, we're missing a lot of oversight here. Hundreds and hundreds of young female athletes were abused throughout that period of time. And so they had to really take a hard look at how do we affect change here and implement something that will provide safeguarding across sports. And so Safe Sport was born out of that. And there are people who get that and appreciate that and will do the course and will appreciate that it's all to keep especially young people safe. And then there are others who, this is America. Like, we don't like to be told what to do, as a general rule. So there are people who will say, I don't need this. I don't want to do this. So, I think a mixed response, and it's a work in progress to get, it's a huge undertaking, for one organization to say, we're going to take on safeguarding for an enormous country in every Olympic sport.
Yeah.
So speaking of safety, I'll go right to this one. What keeps you up at night, Sarah?
I'm definitely,
if not small, if not a toddler. And, I can't believe they're so big. They were both babies.
I know. It's,
they're still little though.
They are. And Max is still in nappies. So yeah, it's, definitely in the thick of it that way. But, look, I think, at the moment, the thing that keeps me up at night is it's quite an intense period in our 4-year cycle. Like, obviously, we've got the Olympics and the Paralympics coming up, which is really exciting. But everything runs on a 4-year cycle for us, funding and agreements. And our budget from the federal government is done on a 4-year forward cycle that aligns to the Olympic and Paralympics. So we're coming up to the federal budget in May, just over a month, 14th of May. And that's really a key moment for us for the entire next 4-year cycle. But with the Brisbane Olympics in 2032, it's actually becoming an 8-year decision, because what they decide now to invest in sport will have an impact, of course, on 2032. We know that we're under significant cost of living pressures. Australia has thus far avoided a recession, but still cost of living, and, the region opening up off the back of COVID and the expenses around that, it's a really tough time, and our costs have soared. What used to be a $2,500 flight to go to Europe per athlete is now $4,500. Accommodation, costs in Europe tripled for a period of time there. They're certainly not getting better in the Olympic year. But our costs have significantly increased. And so what we're all waiting for across the Olympic, Paralympic and Commonwealth sports is, will the government invest, I guess, at the required level given that we have a home Olympics on the horizon. So that's what's keeping me up at night at the moment. And we're doing a lot of work, I guess, politically, and trying to explain to legislators and government, and also the agencies that look after us, namely the Australian Sports Commission, trying to articulate what this means and what we need now in order to be successful in 4 and 8 years' time. So that for me is probably the biggest thing is the funding.
That sounds familiar.
Yes. How about you? What keeps you up at night?
Very little keeps me up at night because I'm a good sleeper. But, it's always the little things that are just silly and really shouldn't be keeping me up. But in terms of the big things, the big worries it's the same thing. Are we going to raise enough money every year? We have no government support, as I think you know. We have USOPC, United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, money every year. This year it's $1.9 million, but the budget for the high performance program is well over $4 million. And there's not $1 of government support. So it's how do we get people to a place and companies to a place where they're comfortable funding U.S. rowing? And it feels like we're often fueling the plane while flying it, maybe fixing it and fueling it while flying. And, are the athletes being well taken care of? Are they happy? Are they going to stay at U.S. rowing, continue to train and be successful? And then the safeguarding front, and then other initiatives that are separate from high performance. So there's a lot, like you said in the beginning of this conversation, just things come at you sideways. And so that'll keep you up. And speaking of which, when you fast forward to the Olympics this summer, this will be the first time you're at the Olympics in Paris as not an Olympian, but as the CEO of Rowing Australia. Have you thought about where you'll be sitting and whether you'll be able to watch? I mean, I know you'll be able to watch, but have you, because I've had my own moments of anxiety about that. I feel like I almost, how you hear about the parents who are like, I can't even watch, like Johnny's doing his dive, I can't watch. Like I feel like I will be so nervous I might not be able to watch.
I'm totally the same. I coached before I went back into sports administration, and I was terrible. I just got so nervous. In the big races for my athletes, I actually couldn't even watch. I certainly couldn't ride my bike or anything like that. I was like, I'm going to crash, I'm going to fall off. So this is like even more intense than that. I find myself thinking about it, and I get emotional, but I guess I also feel like I understand. I've been there. This will be the first Olympics I go to since I raced at the Olympics. So there's sort of an element of actually being in that environment for the first time in a totally different capacity, but also really understanding and empathizing with the athletes and what they're going through and what has built up to that. And not just that, their parents as well and their supporters, because I know what it was like for my parents who were on that journey with me the entire time. So I really, I understand it. So there is a lot that I'm feeling as I think about it. But, I just feel like a bit of a proud kind of mum. And I know that feels like a cliche, but I really do. Like at the World Championships last year, I'd only started in July, and then I was in Belgrade, and, we had a good performance. We won 5 medals, and our PR3 crew became world champions, and they're just the most amazing people. And so I just felt incredibly proud of all of our athletes and coaches and the support team, and to have the opportunity to lead the organisation. And I just want to give them the best chance to realise their dreams and to be successful, not because, we have to return Olympic gold medals and those are our metrics. Ultimately that takes care of itself, and we'll do whatever we can to set that up. But I just want them to be able to go and realise their dreams and have a positive experience and walk away, really thinking, wow, that is a life best experience that's changed me forever. I'm an Olympian or I'm a Paralympian, and what that means for them for the rest of their lives. So, yeah, I'm really excited, and I'm actually going to be there as a technical official because I'm on the World Rowing Council as the continental representative for Oceania, so I have a technical role. When the Australians are racing their finals, you might find me out in the toilets or something like that because I don't know I'll be able to watch.
Well, I will come look for you, and we can bury our faces in our hands together, and I'll be rooting for you, unless, of course, we're in the same race, and then I can't. But I'll still be cheering. We're big fans, and I've been a big fan of you since we met, and I was so thrilled when I saw another woman would be leading rowing in another country. So. With that, I wish you so much luck, and you don't really need it, and excited to see you this summer in Paris.
Thank you, Amanda. And same for you. You were in the role before I stepped into the role. And I think having that visibility and having women take on these positions, and they are hard, and you do cop a lot of public backlash about, all sorts of things, and you do have to have a thick skin. And I think, I've really valued your support, both before and now leading into this role. And even though our nations obviously compete, I think we've developed a really strong rapport and that sharing of IP just to make our sport better and to make our organisations better. So I really appreciate your support and congratulations on everything you're doing as well.
Thank you, Sarah. I will see you in the porta potties.
Sounds good.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
And that's all for this episode of The Swing of Things. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Remember to like, share, and follow from wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others to find us. Please subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes. And thanks for listening.